I've already been drinking. Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. I am Britt, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you probably should because I talk about geeky things. But sometimes I sit on my couch and I tell you guys the crazy stories about the reasons why I drink. And today, I'm going to tell a story about why I probably shouldn't drink. It has nothing to do with alcohol. Well, okay, there was some parts of it that involved alcohol. But I'm going to tell you guys the story about the time I went to Mexico. So Mexico was an interesting adventure. I've been to Mexico twice in my life. Once when I was 13, we went on a cruise. We ported in Cozumel. So I've been to Cozumel twice. And when I was a senior in high school, my Spanish club decided, since we were learning Mexican Spanish specifically versus Spain Spanish or Caribbean Spanish or South American Spanish, which all have slightly different dialects, slightly different wording. Matter of fact, Spain Spanish has a whole different verb conjugation, so I got to learn that at one point, which was fun. But we were learning Mexican Spanish, so we went to Mexico, and I was very excited to go to Mexico. It was the very first time I flew without my parents. It was the very first time that I had this kind of freedom in my life, really. You know, obviously I'd had a license since I was 16, so I had some freedom at that point, but this was the first time that I really had freedom. So I remember, because my mom and I were still living up in the Brainerd Lakes area, because I was going to school in a city called Pequot Lakes, so we were living in central Minnesota, so about 3 hours north of where I live right now. My dad lived in this house. My parents were split up for a short time, mostly due to the fact that my dad had a job down here. My mom didn't really want me to move out of the school that I was in. I'd been there since kindergarten, and it just made better sense for me, especially with where my mental health was at the time. My teenage years were tough, that it just made better sense for me to not be uprooted and move to a much larger city. I mean, we basically lived in a tiny town, and this is the 5th largest city in the state, so and it's just south of Minneapolis. So what are you gonna do? Anyway, so my dad lived in this very house, and so even though there was obviously a bus that was going to take the kids down to the airport here in the Twin Cities, we talked to the school approved it. Since my dad lived here, the school approved that I could come here and then meet them all at the airport. My mom woke me up at like 5 o'clock in the morning to get me to the airport on time, and she woke me up, and I remember being really groggy, and Mom goes, "Hey sweetie, how are you feeling?" Which should have just been like a forewarning of what was about to happen in my life. But I said, "Scared," and my mom went, "Yeah, me too." Because again, this was the first time I was going anywhere without my parents. I was 18, but I had never like gone anywhere without them. This was the first time I'd gone. I mean, granted, we had adult chaperones. We had 2 adult chaperones. Our Spanish teacher, who I had known since I was 7, he's the one who taught me Spanish at a very young age, and he also was not thrilled that I took Spanish from him because he knew that I knew Spanish. And so when I sat there in Spanish class, Spanish 1, he puts his hands on my desk and he's like, "You better not be doing this for an easy A." And I was like, "I'm not. I have 2 choices, German and Spanish, and I don't want to learn German." And he goes, "All right, fine." So, because we had to learn a language, we had to have 2 semesters of a language course, or 2 years essentially of a language course. And because the way my school did things was very interesting. It was not normal. My school was not normal. We had the block system. So if you guys are familiar with the block system, that's what my school had. We had the block system. I don't know if they still do it that way, but anyway, 2 full years of school, or of a second language. And we had 2 options. We had Spanish and we had German. Why we didn't have Norwegian in that area is beyond me, but so I didn't want to learn German. I did not want to learn another Germanic language. Norwegian is a Germanic language. I didn't want to learn another Germanic language, which is weird because I eventually learned another Romance language, even though Señor Nego was like, "Don't do it, don't minor in French," and I was like, "I'm going to minor in French anyway because je parle français." And so then when my French teacher would come up to me and ask me and say, "Bonjour, comment ça va?" which is "Hello, how are you?" and I would go, "Así, así," and go, "Oops, that's Spanish." So yeah, my Spanish and my French do not get along very well. Anyway, that was one of the reasons I didn't want to take German. So I get to the airport, everything's fine. My best friend Nikki is coming on the trip with, and we're sitting there. I've got pictures, so I'll put up the pictures that I have that other people took. I didn't take. I took some pictures, but all of them were I didn't have a digital camera. We were hanging out at the airport. I was feeling great. I was feeling fine. Then we get into the airplane. This is where everything goes downhill for me. You get on the airplane and we start taking off. And then all of a sudden, I am feeling like the skin on my face is peeling off of my skull. That's what I'm feeling. The skin on my face is peeling off of my skull. My eyes are watering, not because I am crying, but because of the pain that existed on my face. And Nikki was like, "Are you okay?" Through the entire flight, Nikki's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, I don't know. No, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And everybody around me is like, "What's going on? What's happening?" And it was the worst flight. We landed in Dallas, in the Dallas-Fort Worth airport, and to get onto the international flight, even though MSP is an international airport, but we had a layover in Dallas to get on the international flight, and I just wasn't feeling good. Like, by the time when we got on the ground, I was fine. I was better. I was like, I don't know what that was. It was really weird. And Nikki's like, "Well, we'll watch it on the next flight when we fly to the Yucatan," because we landed in Cancun, and we toured the Yucatan Peninsula. We ended up at Cozumel, and then we flew out from Cozumel. So, and we'll get to all that when I get there. Anyway, so we land. I'm feeling fine. Nikki's like, "We're gonna watch it on the next flight," and then the next flight happens, and it happens again. And at this point, so this one was a 3-seater. So it was me, Nikki, and then this girl that I'm still friends with, Danielle. And I was losing it. This has caused a phobia of flying. Like, I'm not afraid of flying. I'm fine with flying. As long as I can be at a window seat so I don't get claustrophobic, I'm fine with flying. But the phobia of this happening again exists. This was the worst pain I have ever been in my life. Granted, I have never bore a child, I've never broken a bone, so take that into consideration. This is the worst pain I have ever experienced in my life, to this day. So, we are in the flight, we're in the air, and the stewardesses are coming over, the flight attendants are coming over, and they're giving me water, they're giving me orange juice, they're doing whatever they can just to try and make me comfortable. And I am miserable. Senior Nagel, who of course is an old friend of ours, he was trying to figure out what's going on. He was trying to ask, were you sick before you got on the flight? No, I had no symptoms of anything before getting on this flight. Had nothing. I was not sick. I was perfectly fine. Spoiler alert, I was sick. And I could not, for the life of me, figure out what was going on with me. I had never experienced this before on a flight. At one point, I remember somebody asking me, was this a panic attack? And I'm like, I've flown numerous times. When I was a kid, we'd go to either Disney World or on a cruise, basically. We went to Arizona once. I've been on tons of flights at this point. I've never been anxious on a flight unless I'm not in the window seat. It's the only time I'm not anxious on a flight, but I was on a window seat both of these flights. I couldn't figure out what was going on. Nobody could figure out what was going on with me. Because I had no symptoms prior to this. I was not having a panic attack. Nobody could figure out what was happening. So we land in Mexico, and again, as soon as we get on the ground, I'm fine. So both of the adult chaperones are starting to think, well, this was obviously something to do with the air pressure. And that's obviously what it was, because of how I was sick, what I was sick with. We just couldn't figure it out. And so we get to the hotel. We're, happy. We're doing fine. Nikki and I are sharing a room with 2 juniors. So Nikki and I were seniors. We were sharing a room with 2 juniors. I ended up not really sharing a room with them the rest of the trip because a bunch of juniors decided to get together and just sleep in the same room. So it was really mostly just Nikki and I the entire time, which is fine with us. And it means we got our own bed. We got our own beds. I mean, Nikki and I have no problem sharing a bed together because we've shared beds together pretty much our entire friendship. But if we can have our own beds, great. So we get to the room. I'm fine. Nikki keeps checking in on me. Are you okay? I'm fine. I'm better. Like, I don't know what that was. That was so weird, but I was glad to put it behind me. Then we get to dinner. And for some reason, I'm sitting there at dinner, and I'm starting just to become incredibly tired. And I couldn't figure it out because we didn't switch, time zones. There's no reason for jet lag. And I've never been one to have issues with jet lag ever. Like, again, I've not gone too far on a plane. Like, I've gone to Vancouver and I've gone to Florida. Like, I think that's the farthest I've ever flown either way. I've never really left this continent unless you count going to the Caribbean. I've never really had issues with jet lag, and we didn't switch time zones, so that wouldn't even make any sense. And I don't think we switched time zones. Did we switch time zones? I don't remember. Anyway, we may have been in the Eastern time zone. We might have been. Where is the Yucatan Peninsula? Alexa, what time zone is the Yucatan Peninsula in?
Here's something I found on reference.com. The entire state of California is located within the Pacific time zone.
Alexa, what time is it in Cancun, Mexico right now?
In Cancun, it's 8:25 p.m.
Okay, so we didn't even switch time zones. I knew it was like 8 something, but didn't realize it was already 8:30. Couldn't figure out why at dinner. I was just becoming so tired. Next thing I know, there's all of a sudden a mariachi band just playing by our table. I fell asleep at the table. So here's a picture of our table. If you look at me, you will see that I am dying. I could barely function at this point. This was night 1. This was right after these 2 flights where I had all this immense pain. I was feeling fine, but just ridiculously tired. And that should have been my first clue, but I was so young that I hadn't quite figured out what my first symptoms are when I'm sick. My first symptom is I get incredibly tired. And I remember how I said I was groggy, waking up. Always my first symptom is I get incredibly tired. It's also my first symptom of when I've had a little too much to drink. Wasn't a drinker back then. Not really. We'll get to that. So weird. So we went back to the hotel room. I went to sleep. Woke up the next morning. I'm starting to feel something creeping. So that whole day, our second day, we went to this island just off of Cancun. We went to this island and Nikki and I got hit on by a store owner. I bought Shayna a poncho. That's all she wanted. She wanted a poncho. An authentic Mexican poncho. I don't even know if she still has it. Be interesting to find out. Nikki and I, like I said, got hit on by a store owner. Nikki bought some kind of outfit, and we were having a good time. And this was where the drinking came in, just a little bit. So we were heading back. We knew that it was time to head back, so we were gonna get back on the ferry to take us back to where our hotel was. And I heard, swear to God, I heard Mexico, it was Spanish class party on the second floor. So I said, all right, let's go upstairs. And Nikki goes, really? And I was like, yeah, let's go upstairs. She heard what was actually said. Tequila Party upstairs. So we're sitting up there, and this music starts playing on this ship. There's these bartenders running around, and they're like, all right, let's do the tequila. And I was like, what? So they're walking around pouring flavored tequila, so not like straight tequila, down people's throats. So they're like over here on this side of the ferry. And Nikki and I are here, like I'm here, Nikki's right here, because Nikki was in front, was first. So Nikki was on this side of me. And I go, are you gonna do this? And she goes, I don't know, are you gonna do it? I was like, if you do it, I'll do it. So Nikki's like, all right, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. So they get to her because they don't force you. They're like, if you don't open your mouth, they're not going to pour tequila down your throat, obviously. So they get to Nikki, and sure enough, opens her mouth, and they start pouring tequila down her throat. So I lived up to my promise. If Nikki did it, I'd do it. I should actually already throw in here that I did actually have a drink prior to this. I had a pina colada. Mind you, I was of age in Mexico. I was 18. Nikki was not. But made it even better because they don't card in Mexico. I sent 2 17-year-olds to go get me the pina colada. That was on the ferry there. Anyway, so it was open bar. Statute of limitations on this kind of situation. Anyway, so because we were hanging out with some friends, so I had this major crush on this guy. He was on this trip. We'll get to that. I got my heart broken in Mexico. It's fine. I'm over it because I look back and I'm like, why? He was a very problematic human. But he and his best friend were hanging out with me and my best friend. Because the three of us, the guy had a crush on me and Nikki, we all did theater, so we all knew each other. Then his friend and I had known each other forever because our families were friends. So he and I had known each other forever. So the 4 of us were kind of this foursome. And I sent the 2 17-year-old boys to go get me a pina colada. Nothing wrong with that, right? I think I was more or less trying to look cool in front of the guy I had the crush on. Anyway, so they're pouring tequila down my throat. They move on. And I'm like, this is so embarrassing. Sadie and I go downstairs, bottom boat. We get back to the hotel. Mind you, everyone else had already been drinking. Everyone. He sits down in the lobby of the hotel, and he starts going at it. Just being like, how dare you guys do what you did? This is a school trip. Nobody should be drinking. He goes, why can't you act more like Brittany? As I'm sitting there, having already sent 2 17-year-olds to go get me a pina colada earlier that day, and just got off of a ship where they poured tequila down my throat. And he's using me as an example. Anyway, so that was that one. So then we all went out to dinner, but we were taken into the city, and we were told, just go have dinner wherever. This was a free day, so just go have dinner wherever you want to go. So Nikki and I go to Johnny Rockets for a burger. And this is when I started feeling really sick. And I was like, I don't know what's going on with me. So Nikki's like, all right, let's go maybe get you some cold medicine. Maybe this is a cold coming on. And I was like, okay, sounds good. So we went, found like a drugstore kind of thing, got, I don't know, some kind of cold medicine. It wasn't NyQuil because at this point I'd already stopped drinking NyQuil. That's a whole other story about why I still have never taken NyQuil. If you guys want to know that story, I kind of touch on it a little bit in my Draw My Life story from a million years ago. But I kind of touch on that story in there. Anyway, it's definitely not one of the reasons why I drink NyQuil. I've not had NyQuil since. I have sat there with NyQuil on the counter, staring at it, wishing I could take it because it'll give me some sweet release into sleeping that night, but I don't. I always put it away. I have not had NyQuil since I was 17 years old. Anyway, if you guys are interested in that story, I gave you a card, click on it, and watch my Draw My Life story. Anyway, so we get some kind of cold medicine, we go back to the hotel, I take it, I'm feeling better. I'm taking this cold medicine kind of throughout the week, and I'm feeling great. So we do some really cool things. We went to Chichen Itza, Nikki and I climbed one of the pyramids, and of course, in proper geek fashion, we climbed it, pretend like we were dying, then stood up when somebody looked at us and pretend we were all cool because that's what they did in Road to El Dorado. Nikki and I were obsessed with Road to El Dorado when we were young, when it first came out. Just obsessed with it. There's this hotel in West Bloomington that we'd stay in. My dad was working down here but still living still living up north, and he would take me and Nikki down there during the summer with him, and we'd stay in this hotel, and every single time HBO was playing Road to El Dorado, and we would watch that, and then so we'd wake up, I'd make myself some tea, we would go to the vending machine and get junk food, have that for breakfast while I'm drinking my tea, and we'd watch Road to El Dorado. Then we'd get in our swimsuits, go down to the hotel pool, and we'd swim for a few hours while talking about Animorphs. And then we'd come back up to the hotel room and just hang out for the rest of the day. That was our daily routine at this hotel whenever we'd stay there. Anyway, that was fun. But so that's what we did when we climbed Chichen Itza. And it was such a fun experience. We went cliff diving in a cenote. We saw Uxmal, which was another Mayan ruins. We couldn't climb that pyramid. That pyramid was closed, I think, just for like refurbishment. I think they were working on making sure that it was still safe and everything. And we had a blast. It was a bus tour. There was a night where we had a bus dance party. It was so much fun. We just had a really great time, except for the fact that even though I wasn't feeling sick anymore, my legs were in massive pain. There were actually some things I couldn't do because I couldn't climb stairs anymore. I don't know if it was just using muscles that I wasn't using, because I was not athletic at all in high school. I did not have any interest in anything athletic when I was in high school. So climbing Chichen Itza, I think, really did something to my legs, did something to my muscles. Good things, actually, but I was in immense pain for the rest of the trip. One of the things we did at Uxmal was we saw this night show thing where they talked about the history of the Mayan people. And obviously it was in Spanish, but you could get these headphones to listen to it in English, but we were encouraged as Spanish students to not get the headphones so that we could try and work it out. So I didn't have headphones. Nikki and I were talking about how I was just so obsessed with this guy, and I just wish that he would finally look at me that way. Instead of as a friend, I wish he would just look at me like this hot piece of ass. And I didn't realize he had caught on to my crush on him. I don't know when he caught on to my crush on him. I have no idea if it happened while we were in Mexico. I have no idea if it happened prior to Mexico. He caught on to this crush I had on him. And at one point, he leans in between the two of us. He goes, real sly, and then walks away from us. And I thought for sure that he just heard us talking and found out that point. It had become clear later he had known for a while. Like I said, I don't know if it happened sometime in Mexico or if it happened prior to Mexico, but he had known at least for a little while. He said, look, you and I need to talk. And I was like, okay. So that next day at lunch, I came up to him and I was like, hey, can we talk? His best friend walked away. He's like, sure. And he said, look, I'm fine being your friend, like it was a charity. I'm fine being your friend, but I don't like you that way. And I play it off cool. I play it off like, okay, that's fine. But I was dying inside. It was the first time I had ever gotten my heart broken. Because I had had crushes on guys before, but those crushes would fade, and it would never come to a point where the fantasy was destroyed, right? I was heartbroken. To the point that I would listen to Phantom of the Opera and pretend I was Christine and pretend that he was Raoul, and that at some point he realized that he did love me, and like I had a serious problem. Pretty problematic, pretty stalkery in reality, like if you really think about it. But I got my heart just ripped to pieces. So not only was the flight there miserable, the first night was miserable. I was embarrassed by the fact that I was being used as an example, even though others had already seen me drinking. I was already starting to feel sick. My legs were hurting like hell. And now my one dream guy at the time, my number one dream guy at the time, told me he didn't feel that way about me. And I knew that it had everything to do with my size. He made that clear. I don't remember everything that was said, but he made it clear that he didn't like me because I was larger. And not that that's a problem. Like, if you're not, like, I'm not attracted to larger guys. So, like, I get it. But it hurt. Like, I was devastated. Devastated. Horrifyingly devastated. So, it was just very difficult. And I don't know if it was the fact that my mental health just dwindled away after that, but then I got sick. Really, really sick. So I didn't do anything in Cozumel. I went to Hard Rock Cafe with everybody for our last dinner. I basically spent the rest of the time in Cozumel, in the bedroom, in bed, wanting to die. Now, mind you, I didn't get sick in Mexico. Was not that kind of sick. I had a cold. Turns out it wasn't a cold, but that's what I thought. I thought the cold finally caught up to me. And the free night that we had, Nikki went out to drink with everybody else. At that point, they were like, okay, go have fun. Like, we don't care. Go have fun. So that first night, or that second night, when he gave the lecture, it didn't really matter when we got to Cozumel. So we went out to Hard Rock Cafe. He said, go have fun, be safe, but just go have fun. And Nikki and I went back to the hotel. Nikki had to leave the hotel key with me, because we had to put the key, like, as a card. We had to put it in the slot in the room, or else the power didn't work. It was really weird. And they only gave us one. And so Nikki couldn't get back to the room. So I said, I'll try to stay awake. Otherwise, just knock really hard. And so I fall asleep. And all of a sudden I wake up to knock, 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 knock. Oh, it's Nikki. So I got up, went to the door, opened the door, and was staring this guy who just broke my heart in the eyes. He was knocking on the door for Nikki. And he just glared at me and walked away. Mind you, he and I never spoke again. Never once. Never spoke another word to me ever again. And there's Nikki, and she's like, how are you feeling? And I said, I feel like shit. This is the worst week of my life. Like, this sucks. I'm so miserable. I'm in pain. I'm sick. My heart is broken. Like, everything about what's happening right now, none of it's okay. So then the terror that exists of having to fly home. So we get on the flight, and the pain starts up again. And again, the flight attendants are coming, bringing me water, they're bringing me orange juice, they're bringing me whatever at no cost to me, just trying to make me not die on the plane. I'm crying, I'm miserable, I just can't handle it anymore. Get off the plane in Dallas, and we have to go from one side to the other. Not only was our flight late, but the flight leaving was also late, so we didn't even get to dock right away. We only had 30 minutes to get from one side of the airport to the other to make our flight to Minneapolis. So that wasn't fun. And so there I am by myself, because Nikki and I had gotten separated somehow. There I am by myself, running from one side of the airport to the other. I had to recheck my luggage, because for some reason that was the thing we had to do. And I'm trying to get there. I get there, and mind you, I don't share drinks. Nikki and I sometimes will share a drink. I'm sometimes comfortable with that. I'm sometimes comfortable with my own family. But I don't share drinks. I am so afraid of getting sick. I'm so afraid of being contaminated that I don't share drinks with people. I just don't. I don't share food. I don't share drinks. It's just not a thing I do. Unless you are a makeout partner, or my best friend, or a family member, sometimes I'll feel comfortable in those situations. So I get there, and Nikki goes, I've had some of this water, but do you want this water? And I was like, I'm dying. I felt like my throat was closing in. I could not breathe. I felt like I was dying. Like, legitimately. I felt like dying. So I take it and I just guzzle that water down. Just guzzle it down. We get on our last flight. I'm in more pain. We land, and I get off the flight, and I meet my parents, and they're like, what is wrong? And I was like, everything. Everything is wrong. I'm miserable. Everything is wrong. So we get home. Next day, my parents take me to the doctor. Turns out, before getting on this flight, both sinus cavities were infected and one ear was infected. I had no symptoms at all. I ended up losing my voice completely. I had nothing. My last contest for choir was right after this trip, and I didn't get to go because I had literally no voice. I could barely make out a whisper, and I was just miserable. I was so upset. And when my voice came back, oh, also my voice loss also cost me going to sections my senior year of speech. I went to subsections, didn't quite make it. I was an alternate, but because I was having trouble speaking, and my voice was coming back a little bit by then, but I had lost my voice completely for about 2 weeks. Could not speak really well. Then it came back, and it was like most laryngitis sounding voice. And when it came back, it never quite came back to the way that it was before. It's about an octave lower than it used to be. I can't sing soprano anymore. And if I sing too much, my voice goes away. If I speak too much, my voice goes away. So I have vocal nodules now. And it's attributed to the drainage that existed during that week where I had a sinus infection that was not treated for basically what the doctor said, 2 weeks. From the sounds of what was going on with me, I probably had at least a sinus infections for 2 weeks. And I talked to a doctor at one point, and the doctor said that I have irreparable voice damage. And as somebody who loved singing, as somebody who wants to speak for a living, that was really hard. Like, my whole life changed because of that. It sucks. I'm an alto now, which shouldn't bother me, but does. Because I had dreams of these roles that I wanted to play in musical theater, and they're all soprano parts. And I can't sing them anymore. I still can reach certain notes. Like, I can still reach that final note in Phantom of the Opera, man. I can still sometimes get there. I usually sharp it, but I can sometimes get there. But it's painful, and I usually mess up my voice a lot when I do it. As you can hear, my voice is starting to go already. So Saturdays are fun because I'm talking. I do 2 videos a day on Saturday, and so it's tough. It was a really tough thing to overcome. Having my voice drop an octave, having the fact that I couldn't be a soprano anymore. I went up to my choir director after that and said, I think I need to retest my voice. So we retested my voice. She moved me to alto. And that was devastating. I mean, I was never a true soprano. I was a mezzo soprano, but I was a high mezzo. And it was really hard for me to not be able to hit some of those soprano notes anymore. It was really hard for me to have to understand that I have to do a lot of vocal rest before I can do a show anymore. Before I can sing, before I can do a play, before I can do a show. I had to put on a very deep vocal rest So it's tough. It's really hard. I love singing. It's one of my favorite things to do, but now I only have the confidence to do it in my car because I was so devastated that I was no longer a soprano or mezzo-soprano. I was no longer that, and I was so devastated by that I just stopped learning. I stopped practicing. And so now my voice is nowhere near what it used to be. I know I could get there again. There are people who believe I could actually make it to soprano notes again if I really worked hard at it. But I don't know. I just lost a lot of passion for singing after that. It was just really hard. And it still is hard. It's still hard. Not the soprano thing. That doesn't bother me as much as it used to. But knowing that my voice was damaged so badly because of that, that's tough. So that was one of the worst weeks of my life, even though it should have been one of the most exciting and fun and inspiring. And it was definitely inspiring, definitely fun. But it just was also very devastating. So it's one of the reasons why I drink. So there you go. Have you ever gone on a really great trip that turned out to not be so fun? Or do you have permanent damage to your vocal cords? Let me know in the comments below. There you go. That was a tough one to tell. This is a tough one to tell because it just really sucks at the end of the day. If you guys want to see my last story time, you guys can click right here. If you want to see all the story times I've ever done, you can go ahead and click right here. You can click here to subscribe. And if you do, hit the bell for notifications. I tell stories like this every once in a while. I'm running out, so I don't have as much of a problematic path as some of these other people who do story times on this channel, on this platform. But maybe it's because they make up stories. I don't even embellish them, unfortunately. I wish.